Zootopia, Disney's buddy cop film about animals living together in a modern world, was directed by Byron Howard and Richard Moore. If you saw the trailers, you might think this movie stars Jason Batman as a fox. But you'd be wrong because the main character is actually the bunny. The film's thinly veiled allegory of racism and prejudice went over well with audiences, but it strikes me as something they didn't think too hard about. Stories can have a moral, but when the moral gets in the way of the story itself, that's when the movie's not functional anymore. Furthermore, I don't think the film's message is going to convert any actual racists, so all the movie really succeeds in doing is preaching to the choir for 108 minutes. All they had to do was make a jokes about sloths, and they blew it. Believe it or not, Disney, I know that racism is wrong. I didn't need a children's film to explain that concept to me further. Obviously, because it's a children's film, you could argue that the moral isn't for me, it's for children. And it is true that children need to learn about prejudice. But if you want a moral about prejudice, you can do it in a more subtle, ambiguous way. The Sneetches by Dr. Seuss is a great example. All you have to understand is that some Sneetches have stars and some Sneetches are huge fucking losers who don't. And because the story is ambiguous, it's a lesson that can be applied to different forms of prejudice, not just racism. But because Zootopia doesn't understand subtlety, and because of their insistence on using overtly PC terminology like small-minded, the movie ends up feeling more like a sermon and less like a comedy. Hotel Transylvania 2 pulled off the racism allegory a lot better, but none of you fuckos saw it because y'all thought you were too good for it.
Listen, if you think I don't like it, you definitely don't want to say blah 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 in front of my father.
The metaphor is more fun here because they didn't treat the subject matter with so much reverence that they were above making jokes about it.
Huh? That's kind of racist.
I don't know why people don't like these movies more. I guess it's because they're too silly and goofy. But come on, cartoons aren't supposed to be silly. They're only supposed to make me cry. Ultimately, the number one reason Zootopia's message doesn't work is because allegories have to work on two levels, the literal and the allegorical. Everybody knows race is a superficial thing. It doesn't influence what's going on in your stupid broken brain. All of our stupid brains are broken equally. But the difference between a rabbit and a fox isn't superficial, and the movie tries to penalize you for believing that it is. When Nick was asking Judy if she was afraid of him as she reached for her fox repellent, all I could think was, of course you should be afraid of him, you idiot. He's a fucking fox. Best possible ending this movie could have had is if Nick killed Judy and ate her. Now, before you go crazy in that comments section, I don't want you to think I'm some nerd who's harping on an animated movie for not being scientifically accurate enough. I know that these are cartoon animals and they don't have to adhere to real-world logic. And the plot lets us know that these characters are civilized. But what is the point in making a movie about animals only to have the film incessantly tell us over and over and over again that there's nothing animal about these animals? Animals are great for storytelling and they lend themselves well to a lot of different metaphors, but racism isn't one of them because it's a strictly human notion. I don't trust animals. The only animal I like is Adolf. Right, buddy? Why can't there be an animated children's film about animals trying to be civilized, but then having to come to terms with the fact that because of what it inherently means to be an animal, they can't suppress their wild instincts? And also, Bill Murray is in it. Oh, wait, they did make that movie, and it's the best fucking movie I've ever seen.
Why? Why did you lie to me?
Because I'm a wild animal.
Fantastic Mr. Fox is allegory done right. Foxy can't suppress his urge to steal chickens, and likewise, people can't change who they are. Animal nature and human nature aren't identical, but they have one thing in common. They're both deeply rooted powerhouses of inevitability. If you've never seen this movie, you're a fucking dope, 'cause it's great, ya dork. So, as well-intentioned and good-natured as Disney's message about prejudice is, this cartoon fox ends up being a lot more thematically coherent than this cartoon fox. It has some good performances by Jason Batman, and I like some of the character designs, but ultimately there's only one word I would use to describe this film. I'm Max G, this was my brain dump of the week, and I hope you hated it. Cram a cork in your Oreo hole, you pig dick fucko.